I got pregnant, but I only wanted the baby, not the father. So, I ran away with the baby overnight. 3 months later, the baby's father cornered me against the wall, lifted his shirt to reveal his 8-pack abs, and said, "You're so weak. You'd give up a handsome man like me just for a ball that hasn't even formed yet." I stuttered. "Well, before I could finish, he declared, "Obviously, you should have both. My pregnancy was purely an accident. A few months ago, to avoid overworking myself to death, I decided to take a few months off to relax. The destination, a beach abroad, sunshine, sand, and handsome men. It was pure bliss. Just when I thought I'd had enough relaxation, and was about to head back to work, Jaden showed up with his 8-pack abs. He wasn't there to relax, though. He was mixing business with pleasure, meeting people for work while sneaking in some downtime. When he appeared, every other handsome man on the beach seemed dull in comparison. Other men either had abs or a nice face. He had both, along with perfect V-lines. I first noticed him thanks to my assistant Luna who screamed when she saw him. Luna's level of fangirling matched her work ethic. Her lifelong dream was to have a handsome man on her left arm, and loads of money in her right hand. At Luna's scream, Jaden turned his head. In the sunlight, he squinted his charming eyes, looking annoyingly sexy. 10 seconds later, he walked over to me, ignoring Luna's exclamations. What a coincidence! His voice was annoyingly sexy too. If he weren't the son of my rival company's CEO, I'd have been tempted to flirt with him. I replied flatly. What a coincidence! He casually sat beside me. You, a workaholic, have the time to relax here. He said it like I didn't deserve a break. Though, to be fair, before this, I was indeed infamous in the industry for being a workaholic, the kind of ruthless boss who would drag employees back on New Year's Eve to plan for the upcoming year. Even Luna had been pulled back on New Year's Eve once, complaining to my face, "Victoria, if you weren't paying me 10 times the salary, I would have blocked you by now." And yet, she still works happily with me. Jaden's comment annoyed me. Originally, I didn't plan on paying him any attention, but then he added, "Coincidentally, our company has a project that we want to collaborate with you on. Shall we discuss it?" My business instinct kicked in. He was right. I didn't deserve to relax. All I wanted was to make money. Money makes me happy, even though I already had more than enough to last several lifetimes. So, I got on his money-making boat. We started talking about the collaboration, which soon drifted to topics like poetry, art, and life goals, only to circle back to business. The poetry and life discussions were Jaden's idea, but every time he brought them up, I dragged him back to business. Eventually, he gave up, slumping in defeat. "Victoria, I surrender. Let's continue discussing the deal. As long as it's not dead, we can keep talking." I appreciated how he caught on quickly. In just half a month, we worked overtime and finalized the multi-billion project. From the big picture down to the details, the contract was signed. After signing, Jaden, looking like a panda with his dark circles, pitifully asked me, "Victoria, seriously, do you have any hobbies other than work?" I thought for a moment. Sure, 8-pack abs on a handsome man. Without missing a beat, he lifted his shirt, revealing his abs. I shouldered asked earlier. He tried to tempt me with his abs to go out for drinks, but I immediately declined. I told him, I have a video conference with my company's executives later to finalize the execution plan. He let out a long sigh. "Victoria, you liar." But 3 days later, I still went out drinking with him. No reason, really, just that I was in a bad mood that day. And, as usual, he was persistent with his invitations. Then, I drank too much. When I woke up, we were both naked, lying in the same bed. The marks on our bodies were not only proof of the wild night, but also that both of us had been willing participants. No need to call the cops. We just looked at each other, feeling awkward. In the suffocating awkwardness, I mentally cycled through a dozen bad girl lines. But before I could use any, Jaden asked, "Victoria, what do you want for breakfast?" Without thinking, I replied, "You." Pause. There was no follow-up to that. Where was I going with that? Afterward, to avoid any more awkwardness, We both tacitly agreed not to mention that night again. I played the bad girl by sleeping with him, and not taking responsibility. He played the bad boy by sleeping with me, and apparently not caring either. We spent over a month abroad, and then I came home with 2 lines on a pregnancy test. Staring at those 2 lines, I fell into deep thought. That night, I had Luna book me a flight home, not to get an abortion, of course. Honestly, what woman doesn't want to skip the hassle of men and have her own little bundle of joy? The tricky part was how to make sure Jaden didn't find out about that month. So, I kept the secret well hidden. Not even Luna knew. I simply declined all social engagements that I could, and for the ones I couldn't, I had Luna drink for me. At the same time, I accelerated my search for a boyfriend. After returning to the country, I high-profiled my way through 3 boyfriends in 1 month. Luna thought I had gone mad. She didn't know that I was trying to prevent Jaden from finding out the baby was his once I started showing. But my carefully laid plans still failed. When I was on my 5th boyfriend, Jaden appeared in front of me. "Victoria, what are you trying to hide by constantly changing boyfriends?" So smart. No wonder he nearly toppled his father's company after starting with just a few million. His father was so furious he called Jaden an ungrateful son in front of the media. For the sake of his health, Jaden's father handed over the company last year, and went on a world tour with his wife. As I marveled at Jaden's achievements, I also racked my brain for a way to get rid of him. After a lot of thinking, I only came up with one solution: play the bad girl. I casually patted his face. "Jaden, we're both 30-year-olds. Surely, you understand the rules of the adult game." His brows furrowed tightly, and he gritted his teeth. "Victoria, is this why you left without a word and blocked me?" I smiled. "Jaden, wasn't this our unspoken agreement? Otherwise, why didn't either of us ever mention liking each other during our time abroad?" Jaden left, fuming. He looked genuinely outraged, as if I had wronged him, as if we hadn't just been playing around. Of course, if I weren't pregnant, we could have played a little longer. Luna had been with me since she graduated from college. We were classmates back then. She gave me an intense look as if trying to dissect me. "Victoria, what's going on? Weren't you and Jaden always at odds?" I said. I got bored. "You're talking bull." One curse word, 1,000 deducted from your salary. She held back and asked, "You're talking nonsense. What really happened? Just tell me, and I'll help with anything that doesn't involve throwing money at it." I was touched. Luna had always been true to her word. When I joined the company after graduating, with no one I could trust, she stuck by me, working her way from temp to my personal assistant. She's drunk on my behalf, cursed people out for me, and helped me plot against my own father. Together, we managed to take control of the Ning family shareholders. Even after puking her guts out or losing arguments, she never complained to me. When we finally succeeded in outmaneuvering my father and securing control over the shareholders, she hugged me and cried, "Victoria, let go of your grudge and live a happy life." All because, back in college, when she was struggling financially, I slapped someone who tried to bully her and paid for her tuition and living expenses for 4 years. But despite my gratitude, I still couldn't tell her about the pregnancy. The moment I did, she'd immediately know why I dumped Jaden. She knows everything about my past. She knows how much I despise the concept of father. My father's story is a typical one. A cheating man, who also gaslit the wife who supported him to success. Back then, my dad was a nobody. My mom invested her money and efforts into starting a business with him. Once the company took off, she got pregnant. She gave birth to me. But my dad, who valued sons over daughters, was upset she had a girl. When she got pregnant again, he insisted on testing the gender. It was another girl, so they aborted her. In 3 years, they aborted 3 pregnancies. My mom was left infertile as a result. Yet my dad didn't want to divorce her. A divorce meant splitting his assets. So, he kept cheating behind my mom's back, hoping to have a son to inherit his fortune. But karma struck. His mistress also gave birth to a girl. After finding out about his affairs, my mom didn't break down. She accepted his gaslighting and continued playing the role of a loving wife, waiting for him at home. He enjoyed the success of maintaining a stable home life while indulging in his affairs outside. Then, quietly, my mom started spiking his drinks with infertility medication. By the time he realized it, it was too late. For a long time after that, he physically abused her. Every time I came home from school, I'd see her covered in bruises. They were either fighting, or about to start fighting. When I graduated from college, I begged my mom to divorce him, and live with me. By then, my dad had stopped hitting her, but rarely came home. He had also taken over a portion of her shares in the company, and given them to his mistress. He even brought the mistress into the company as his secretary, allowing her to do as she pleased, embezzling, taking bribes, and hiring her cronies. He was one step away from making her his official partner. But my mom wouldn't divorce him. She was almost fanatically obsessed, saying, "I'll drag him down with me. I'll never let him marry that witch." In the end, she didn't drag him down. She dragged herself down. More than 2 years ago, after my dad's mistress provoked her during a visit, my mom, heartbroken, fell down the stairs. She hit her head and spent months in the hospital before passing away. Their marriage taught me one thing: if you want a happy life, just skip the marriage part. The night I went drinking with Jaden, I was feeling down because I had dreamed of my mom again the night before. I missed her. As I contemplated how to tell my unborn child that their father tragically died before they were born, Jaden found me again. At that moment, I deeply regretted signing that contract with him. Even after blocking him, I couldn't avoid him. He showed up in my office, using our collaboration as an excuse to chat nonsense with me. After the third time he asked me pointless questions, like, "Did you eat yet?" I pulled out the contract and checked the penalty fees for breaching it. For the sake of my baby, I was willing to pay. But 10 seconds later, I stuffed the contract back in despair. No, I had to come up with a better plan. Although I didn't have severe morning sickness, I couldn't guarantee I wouldn't accidentally give myself away by throwing up in front of Jaden. At most, I had another month before he'd notice I was pregnant. I went to my childhood friend, Roman, and asked him something that made him spit out his coffee. I said, "Let's get married." Him, still shocked, he asked, "Victoria, are you out of your mind?" I wasn't. Roman was the only person my age, unmarried, with a matching status, who wouldn't cling after a divorce. He also owed me a huge favor. A year ago, his company had financial problems, and I helped him out. Of course, he had helped me plenty before that. Seeing how serious I was, he asked, "Why?" I made up a serious lie. "I want to experience the diversity of life. We'll divorce in 3 months. We'll do a prenup, and I won't take a penny from you." Then I added, "If you feel like it's unfair, I'll compensate you." He looked me up and down before saying, "Tell me the whole truth. Don't try to guilt trip me." Knowing someone too well is a pain. With just a glance, he knew I was trying to manipulate him with last year's favor. I left out the father's name and said, "I'm pregnant. I need someone to take responsibility." "Don't worry, the child won't have your surname. They'll take mine." Roman rubbed his temples, suppressing his frustration as he closed his eyes briefly. After 10 seconds, he spoke firmly, "Victoria, give me the father's name. Don't force me to find out on my own. If I have to, it'll be the father's funeral." His tone darkened. "I don't mind making you a real widow before we get married." After weighing my options, I admitted, "Jaden, it wasn't cowardice. Roman really would go that far." After I gave him Jaden's name, I anxiously watched his reaction. But instead of shock, Roman simply went from thoughtful to angry. And then, he laughed. He laughed and said, "All right, when are we getting the marriage certificate?" Now I was feeling uneasy. I cautiously asked, "Aren't you going to think it over?" He rejected the idea immediately. "No need. If it's something that will piss off Jaden, I don't need to think it over, especially not something as satisfying as screwing him over." He thought for a moment. "Actually, let's have the kid take my surname too, just to make sure Jaden doesn't try to claim custody." Just how deep is his hatred for Jaden? After all, the 3 of us had grown up together as childhood friends. Back when the 3 of us, Roman, Jaden, and I, lived in the same neighborhood. We went to the same kindergarten and elementary school. Our families' companies used to work closely together. But one day, Out of the blue, Jaden's family cut all ties with mine. Jaden's father even went as far as to publicly declare to the media that he would never cooperate with my family again. It was quite the news in a city at the time, and the move shook our stock prices badly. 20 years have passed since then, and Jaden's father has stuck to his word. Even after I graduated and joined my family's company, my father, driven by profit, once asked me to reach out to Jaden's father to discuss potential cooperation again. Jaden's father flat out refused, so much so that he didn't even want to meet me. After Jaden's family cut ties with mine, they soon moved away, and Jaden was sent abroad by his father to study. We lost contact with him for a long time. We reconnected when Jaden returned from abroad after completing his graduate studies. Instead of parachuting into his family business, he took a sum of money from his father and started his own company. I ran into him at a business event, and we exchanged wished contacts. Due to the animosity between our families, Jaden's father had always been critical of me, and I rarely met Jaden alone, always politely declining his invitations. At the time, I was also busy with my own issues, trying to sideline my father, so I genuinely didn't have the time. Plus, family scandals are best kept private. It's not like I could tell Jaden that my father resented his even more for refusing to work with us again, and didn't want me getting too close to him. But since when did Roman develop such a deep-seated hatred for Jaden? Roman didn't elaborate. He just checked his phone, glanced at his calendar, and tossed me a date. Let's go get the marriage certificate on the 20th of next month. I'll be back from my business trip by then. I nodded in agreement. However, later that evening, when I returned home, Jaden was at my doorstep, brought there by his assistant, drunk and reeking of alcohol. Me. Unbelievable. Jaden's assistant looked at me apologetically. Victoria, I'm so sorry. Jaden went to your office earlier but couldn't find you. He ended up drinking a lot and refused to go home. He insisted on coming to see you. Me. I stared at Jaden coldly. Jaden, I don't discuss work after hours. He looked up at me with his attractive, slightly intoxicated eyes, looking surprisingly pitiful. Why haven't you been answering my calls? And why is your line always busy? Me. Clearly, he was drunk and had forgotten that he was on my blocked list. I wasn't going to explain, so I ignored him and walked to my door to unlock it. As I was about to enter, he grabbed my wrist and growled, Victoria, you heartless woman. You slept with me and then acted like I didn't exist. Me. I looked up and saw a mixture of anger and sadness on his face. Could it be that this guy actually has feelings for me? Thinking back, during our time abroad, although he never said he liked me, he did act like a boyfriend. He was incredibly attentive. He'd greet me with a kiss every morning. He'd always inform me of his whereabouts, no matter where he went. And there was this one time when I wanted to watch the sunset. He was in the middle of a work meeting with his team, discussing a proposal, but after I called him, he immediately stopped what he was doing. I felt a bit guilty, but he dismissed it with a smile. Victoria, work isn't more important than you. Then he sat with me on the shore, waiting for the sun to set, until night fell. There were many moments like that, even earlier, when my mother was still in the hospital and after she passed away. Jaden knew full well that his father disapproved of him getting involved with me. Yet, he would still visit me from time to comfort me. It almost made me think we were still childhood friends. For a brief moment, I felt like I owed him the truth. But then I remembered what my mother had gone through, and I crushed that fleeting thought. I said, Jaden, can you stop being a sore loser? The only reason you're clinging to me is because I dumped you first, and you can't accept it? The sadness in his eyes deepened after I said that. He looked exactly like a heartbroken man who had just been dumped by his girlfriend. He was on the verge of tears. After a long silence, he asked, Is that really how you see me? There was a hint of something fragile in his voice. Suddenly, I remembered that night abroad, when I was half asleep, and he kissed my neck, whispering in that same broken tone, Victoria, I want. Then, well, never mind, I can't say more. Anyway, my heart skipped 2 beats for no reason, but I stubbornly replied, what else would I think? Jaden, I was fully embracing my heartless bad girl persona. Or are you trying to tell me that the reason you're clinging to me is that you've fallen for me? Jaden, haven't you heard? A proper ex is supposed to act like they're dead. The same goes for past lovers. Jaden, I don't know if it was my words that provoked him, but he suddenly hugged me tightly. It was almost suffocating, as if he wanted to merge me into his very being. I didn't dare struggle too much. The doctor had warned me that the first 3 months of pregnancy were fragile, and I should avoid any strenuous activity. I could only silently protect my belly, cursing him in my mind. Jaden, just you wait. Once I can roll up my sleeves and hit you, I'm going to beat you senseless. But before I could even curse him out, he threw the first punch. Victoria, say one more thing to hurt me, and I'll make sure all those ex-boyfriends of yours get completely blacklisted from the entertainment industry. Me. Damn it, another psycho. I must have some sort of psycho magnet. But his threat was effective. I couldn't drag down those struggling young actors, who had nothing to do with this. It would be wrong to let Jaden ruin their careers just because of me. As if on cue, his shameless assistant chimed in. Jaden, should I have them blacklisted tonight, or wait until tomorrow? Me. I shot a glare at his assistant, gritting my teeth, just as I was about to push Jaden away. But then he slumped against my shoulder and fell asleep. This 188-meter-tall giant of a man had the nerve to put his full weight on a pregnant woman. I immediately shoved him away, almost making him fall flat on his butt. If it weren't for his quick-thinking assistant catching him, I told the assistant, take him home. The assistant looked embarrassed again. Honestly, Victoria, I'm kind of a wimp. I can't lift Jaden. Me. He continued. Jaden's pretty much out cold now. He won't cause any trouble. How about we leave him at your place tonight? I'll come pick him up in the morning. Me. Before I could even argue, the wimpy assistant practically dragged Jaden onto my living room couch in less than 10 seconds and fled the scene like a ghost. Me. After the assistant left, I looked at Jaden, slouched on my couch, and twitched my lips. Stop pretending to be drunk. Get up. I'll call you a car to take you home. Jaden didn't move. I took a deep breath. Jaden, can you act like a mature adult? Jaden still didn't move. Jaden, you. Before I could finish my rant, he made a gagging sound. I instantly forgot my frustration and barked. If you puke on my couch, you're dead. Go to the bathroom. 3 seconds later, he sprinted to the bathroom like a man possessed. But half an hour later, things took a turn. Jaden came out of the bathroom, freshly showered, wrapped in one of my bath towels, and blinked innocently. I don't have any clothes. Me. Just wear what you were wearing before. Jaden, it got wet in the shower. Me. It was clear, he wasn't leaving. Looking at the way he gazed at me, then down at his still damp abs, was Jaden trying to seduce me? If he was, there was no way this secret would stay hidden tonight. Wait, what am I even thinking? I need to keep my head straight. To preserve my secret, I chose to flee into the master bedroom before Jaden could even attempt his seduction. With a loud bang, I shut the door behind me, leaving him with a single command, sleep in the guest room. I figured it was better to let him stay the night than to keep arguing. That night, I had a dream about my father, the way he had protected his mistress, and the daughter she had borne him. My mother had grown increasingly hysterical over the years, and my father had done everything in his power to shield his illegitimate daughter from any harm. He even sent her abroad for school, far out of my mother's reach. After my father became infertile, and realized what my mother had done, he threatened her, if you ever harm her, I'll make sure Victoria pays the price. I was my mother's Achilles heel, and in the end, she let my father's illegitimate daughter go. To this day, neither my mother nor I have ever met her. A year ago, when my father passed away in a car accident, I was supposed to meet her for the first time, but for various reasons, I made sure that never happened. Not only did I prevent her from seeing my father's body, but I also barred her from attending his funeral. When a marriage turns out like theirs, when a family is in such ruins, what is the point of it all? I woke up more determined than ever to keep my pregnancy a secret from Jaden. But the next morning, when I stepped out of the bedroom, everything had gone terribly wrong. Jaden was in the living room, holding the folic acid supplements my doctor had prescribed for me, along with the unmistakable proof of my pregnancy from the doctor. Me. I was screwed. I never expected Jaden to show up and snoop around. I had carelessly stashed everything in the drawer under the coffee table in the living room. When Jaden saw me enter, there was a strange, unreadable look in his eyes. Then he stood up abruptly and walked straight toward me. Sensing danger, I instinctively backed up, but in my haste, I accidentally shut the bedroom door behind me. In a matter of seconds, Jaden was in front of me, staring down at me intensely. He was taller than me, and since I was feeling guilty, I could feel the weight of his presence. Once again, my mind scrambled for one of the dozen bad girl lines, but before I could get a word out, Jaden slammed his hand against the door behind me, trapping me in place. He glanced down at my still flat stomach and said, "Victoria, you're unbelievable. You'd give up an 8-pack hunk like me for a ball that hasn't even fully formed yet." Me, I thought to myself at this point, even if you had 100-pack, I wouldn't be interested. Swallowing nervously, I forced myself to calm down. It was finally time to use one of my pre-prepared lines. "Jaden, look, this ball might not even be yours. I've had 5 boyfriends since you." Jaden, I could practically hear him grinding his teeth. "Victoria," he spat, almost growling, "those 5 boyfriends, you didn't even hold hands with." Me, he knew, I was done for. Giving up, I asked, "What do you want?" Jaden, "Buy one, get one free." "I'll take both the ball and the person carrying it." Me, "No way." I was just about to reject him when he suddenly leaned down, cupped my face gently, and gazed at me with an expression so full of emotion it was unsettling. "Victoria, I mean it. If you don't trust me, we can sign an agreement." He paused, then added, "You can decide the terms." "Okay." After another pause, he whispered, "I've liked you for a long time." Jaden had the kind of good looks that could make anyone believe he was deeply in love, even if he did nothing but look at you. But here he was, looking at me with such warmth and conviction. For some reason, as I stared into his tender eyes, my mind drifted back to that night abroad, when he had kissed my neck and whispered, "Victoria, I want to take care of you for the rest of my life. Can we spend our lives together like this?" A lifetime, a whole lifetime. Such a beautiful word. I had heard him that night, but I didn't dare respond. I buried the fluttering in my heart and brushed it off as nothing more than a fleeting desire. But now, I didn't know if it was because my brain was malfunctioning, or because his serious expression had thrown me off, or maybe the lingering alcohol on his breath was making me dizzy. Either way, I was on the verge of nodding my head. Just as I was about to, the doorbell rang. Reality hit me like a splash of cold water, and I pushed him away, heading for the door. I glanced back to see his previously tender expression replaced by one of frustration. He didn't force me any further, opting instead to open the door for me. Standing at the door was his assistant, holding a set of clothes, grinning. "Jaden, your phone was off, so I brought your clothes over." Jaden rubbed his temples and forced a smile as he took the clothes. "Great, nice job. You're amazing. How about I send you to Africa, to open up new markets?" Assistant. His self-proclaimed wimpy assistant stood frozen for only a second before vanishing like the wind. Once the assistant left, the mood was gone. Jaden saw me standing there with my arms crossed, looking defiant as ever. Instead of pushing further, he sighed and asked, "How much would it cost for you to buy me out of your life?" He had finally given in. "Victoria, I'm not forcing you, but I'm pursuing you again. If you still don't accept, we'll talk about it later. But could you at least take my number off your block list for now?" "Okay." I was sharp and clear-headed. "You make it sound like you ever tried chasing me in the first place." He hesitated. He wasn't willing to back down. "I didn't chase you. I flew abroad just to be near you. Worked overtime for half a month at your beck and call. Turning myself into a panda. What do you think I did all that for?" I replied. "Weren't you just sneaking in work while you were at it?" He retorted. "If I had told you from the start that I was there to pursue you, would you have sat down with me and talked business?" I stayed silent. Probably not. In fact, I might have refused to work with him altogether, even though I had wanted to cooperate with his family for a long time. It's funny when I think about it. Even though my father and Jaden's father have been at odds for years, my impression of Jaden has always been good. I remember the time when he protected me. We were only 8 or 9 years old. My dad had been abusive to my mom after she manipulated him, And one day, I walked in on them fighting. My dad threw a cup at my mom, and I instinctively jumped in to shield her. The cup hit me on the forehead instead. Though my mom rushed me to the hospital, I still ended up with a huge bump and bruise. The next day at school, Jaden noticed the bump and furiously asked, "Who hit you?" But as they say, family troubles shouldn't be aired publicly. So, I lied. It was Roman. Roman had tugged on my pigtails the day before. After all, I made my story sound convincing. Roman pulled my hair yesterday, and today this bump showed up. Jaden waited until after school and gave Roman a good beating, warning him, "Pull Victoria's hair again, and I'll beat you up again." Roman wasn't as tall as Jaden at the time, but he was already smarter. When he saw the bump on my forehead, he realized I had lied. He shot us both a look that said, "One of you is pretending to be dumb, and the other really is dumb, right?" Jaden and I, although Roman didn't hold a grudge for getting beat up, he did stop talking to us for a few months after that. The next year, Jaden's family moved away, and I lost touch with him. Jaden didn't even say goodbye. So in the end, it was Roman who stuck around as I grew up. While Jaden disappeared from my life, I unblocked Jaden's number. He already knew. Blocking him had lost its meaning. Jaden, being as pushy as ever, took the opportunity to ask to move into my house under the pretext of helping me during my pregnancy. I, of course, refused. Then, like money was burning a hole in his pocket, he somehow managed to buy the house next door to mine. I couldn't help but think, what a reckless spender. But I don't live by the sea, so I didn't care to interfere. Thanks to his grand gesture, and the fact that my pregnancy was starting to show, it didn't take long for my sister Luna to find out about my situation. She raised her eyebrow, helping me run my business while teasing me. "Victoria, you never disappoint. Only you could pull off something like this." She laughed. "Most people are trophy wives running away with a baby. You're the CEO, and you're taking the baby and running." Jaden, meanwhile, had fully committed to his winning Victoria back mission. Every morning, he'd be waiting at my door, pushing my driver aside. My poor driver kept glaring at him, probably wondering if Jaden was trying to steal his job. One day, the driver even muttered, "Is competition for jobs so intense now, that even CEOs are doing chauffeur work?" Jaden gave him a raise, and the very next day, the driver's attitude changed completely. "Aw, how sweet you two are." "Oh, Jaden, there's a seafood porridge place on Ningyun Road called Little Porridge. Victoria loves it and used to go there all the time." If he hadn't been my driver for 3 or 4 years, I would have scolded him on the spot. In the evenings, Jaden would always be waiting in my office, much to my sister Luna's envy. She'd say, "Victoria, you've got it all, one hand on a handsome man, the other raking in the big bucks." I shot her a look. "Want me to give him to you?" Luna shook her head furiously. "No way. No one in their right mind would steal a man from her best friend." And yet, she immediately turned around and reported my every move of the day to Jaden. Even though I spent the whole day in the office, she made it sound like I had been out working hard at a construction site. Jaden, of course, was heartbroken. Several times, he asked, "Why don't you just take some time off?" On weekends, Jaden would shamelessly hang around my place. After one weekend of sticking around, he pushed his limits again and started sleeping in my guest room. No matter what I did, I couldn't get him to leave. One night, I woke up and saw light coming from the living room. When I opened the door, I saw him curled up on the couch, fast asleep. His phone had fallen to the floor. I picked it up and saw that he had been searching for how to heal trauma from one's childhood. He woke up at the sound of my footsteps, looked up at me, and asked, "Victoria, what's wrong?" The stillness of the night made his emotions more visible. In his eyes, I could see genuine concern. Was he worried that I'd been letting him sleep on the couch this whole time? Seeing what he had been searching for made my heart ache a little. After a moment, I casually handed him his phone and asked, "Why don't you sleep in the guest room?" His answer was straightforward, though maybe he was doing it on purpose. "I was worried you might need something in the middle of the night, so I figured I'd sleep here so I could help you right away." Damn it, he definitely did that on purpose, saying those sweet words in the middle of the night, with that deep voice, trying to sound pitiful. It made my heart race, and left me feeling a bit guilty. His goal was obvious, to get into my bed. And he succeeded. In a moment of weakness, I let slip, "If you want to know what's going on with me right away, wouldn't it make more sense to sleep next to me?" His eyes lit up, and without another word, he darted into my bedroom as if afraid I'd change my mind. When we got home, he finally told the truth after I threatened him by saying that getting angry could affect the baby's development. It was Roman who told him. I thought to myself, I knew it. I had this feeling last time that those two were in on something. Jaden said, "What could I do? If only you were willing to talk to me more one-on-one, I wouldn't have had to go begging that petty Roman for help." He added angrily, "How many years has it been since I beat him up? Yet he still made me apologize before he agreed to help me." He suddenly hugged me from behind, rubbing his chin against the top of my head, his voice deep as he said, "Victoria, I'll always have your back." Suddenly, I felt like crying. Sniffling, I asked him, "Don't you think it's terrible that I plotted against my own father? That I'm an ungrateful daughter?" He became serious and said, "Victoria, you did nothing wrong. Your father was the one who went too far." I couldn't hold it in anymore. I started to cry. Jaden immediately panicked, fumbling over his words. "Victoria, please, don't cry." But I couldn't stop. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. I didn't break down when my mom was hospitalized. I didn't break down when she passed away. And I didn't break down even when my dad died in a car accident. But now, with just a few words from Jaden, I was falling apart. What Jaden didn't know was that, if I could turn back time, 3 years ago, I would have chosen not to plot against my dad. I wouldn't have removed him from his position as CEO, because it was that action that led his mistress to confront my mom, taunting her by saying, "So what if your daughter controls the company? I'm still spending the money you both worked for." She had gloated, "A camel dying of hunger is still bigger than a horse. We'll live out our days comfortably. I still have him by my side. And over the years, has he ever spent a single night with you? Once we bring our daughter back from overseas, we'll have our own happy family. He's even promised to give his remaining shares to our daughter." She added, "And I still have control over part of the company." I watched that surveillance footage countless times afterward, replaying that scene over and over. I even confronted my dad with the video. But even after my mom died, my dad showed no remorse. In fact, not long after my mom's death, he planned to marry his mistress. The car accident that killed him happened while he was on his way to meet her, talking to her on the phone while driving. It was a severe accident. By the time I arrived at the hospital, the doctors had already pronounced him dead. His mistress came rushing to the hospital, trying to secure an inheritance for her daughter. Too bad the accident happened so suddenly that my dad hadn't had time to make a will. I became the sole legal heir. The mistress tried to cause a scene, even demanding to bring her daughter back for a paternity test. She didn't succeed. I had security block her from entering the hospital. Once the doctors declared him dead, I signed the paperwork without delay. He was cremated immediately, leaving no trace for any paternity test. She wanted her daughter to come back and fight for the inheritance after causing my mom's death. Not a chance. I didn't even let them see his body one last time. The mistress didn't even have time to attend my dad's funeral before she was arrested. Over the years, she had embezzled millions from the company using her position as his secretary. She won't be getting out of prison in this lifetime. My dad turned a blind eye to her actions while he was alive. But I wasn't going to tolerate it. I cleaned house. I didn't go after my dad's illegitimate daughter because she had stayed overseas and never caused me any trouble. I haven't shared any of this with Jaden yet. I don't know if, once he finds out how heartless I was toward my dad, he'll still say as firmly as he did today that I did nothing wrong. Time passed quickly. A few months later, I gave birth to a daughter. Jaden was beaming from ear to ear, proudly telling everyone, "This is my daughter." Roman, determined to mess with him, rushed over when it came time to name the baby, and asked me in front of Jaden, "Victoria, why don't we let my goddaughter take my surname? I've already thought of a name." He didn't get to finish before Jaden dragged him out. This time, Jaden really did give him a good beating. Roman, pointing angrily at Jaden, yelled, "So now you're treating me like I'm disposable. When you needed information about Victoria, You were acting all humble. Now that you've got her, you're suddenly acting all high and mighty. Another half a year later, Jaden and I began planning our wedding. The designer of my wedding dress was a relatively unknown but talented designer named Chloe. She had just returned from overseas and opened her own boutique in the city. I chose her after seeing her work. When we met, I found her quite young and very beautiful, but for some reason, she gave me a strange sense of familiarity. I racked my brain, trying to remember if I had met her before, but I came up empty. I said, "You look familiar, Miss Chloe." She paused, a flicker of an emotion I couldn't decipher crossing her face, but it was gone so quickly that I wasn't sure if I had imagined it. Then she tucked her hair behind her ear, smiling gracefully, the picture of someone raised with refinement, and said, "I must just have one of those faces." I thought to myself, if someone this beautiful has an ordinary face, the rest of us owe her a big thank you. We chatted for a while. As she was leaving, she complimented me. "You're beautiful, Mrs. Jaden." To be honest, I was still carrying some baby weight, and hadn't fully slimmed down, but Jaden was rushing to hold the wedding, as if afraid I'd run away. Even though we had already gotten married, he insisted on pushing for the ceremony as soon as possible. They say pregnancy makes you a little fuzzy-headed for 3 years. I had lost my sharp instincts. I didn't think much about Chloe's strange expression back then. It wasn't until 2 months later that I realized something was off with her. I had gone to her boutique for a dress fitting, and there, I saw Jaden. I hadn't planned to go that day. It was only because I happened to be nearby for a meeting that I stopped by. Luna had been pestering me, saying, "Victoria, go try it on. Let me have a sneak peek." Since I had some free time, I went, but before I even got out of the car, I saw Jaden sitting in her boutique through the glass window. The two of them were sitting across from each other, talking. Chloe kept smiling, but then Jaden said something that made her suddenly burst into tears. I. Luna saw it too. She turned to me, panicking even more than I was. In a rush, she said, "Victoria, seeing isn't always believing. They're just talking, that's all." I swallowed hard. In that moment, memories of my father's infidelity and abuse toward my mom came flooding back. I couldn't stop my brain from jumping to the conclusion that Jaden was cheating. Suddenly, everything felt wrong. Out of nowhere, my old instincts kicked in. The sunlight poured in through the window, illuminating Chloe's face as she cried, and in that moment, it all became clear. I finally realized why Chloe had seemed so familiar to me. From this angle, she bore a striking resemblance to my dad's mistress. She was most likely my father's illegitimate daughter. What kind of twisted fate was this? I had chosen her as my own wedding dress designer. Forcing myself to stay calm, I told Luna, "Let's go." Luna refused, muttering, "No way, we can't just leave. You should go in there and demand an explanation. If it's a misunderstanding, clear it up right now. If not," I covered her mouth. I told the driver, "Take us back to the office. I'm not the kind of person who makes a scene." I didn't want to storm in and confront Jaden in a fit of rage. That night, Jaden came home later than usual. The nanny had already put our daughter to bed by the time he got back. I had been feeling uneasy about it all evening. I trusted him. Before we got married, I had asked him why he liked me. I even shamelessly asked if he had liked me since we were kids. Outside the registry office, he had answered me seriously. He told me it wasn't that long. When he was 10, on the day his family moved, he had overslept and didn't even get to say goodbye to me. His mom had rushed him into the car right after he woke up. Back then, he hadn't even thought about saying goodbye. It was only after growing up that he realized that the goodbye he never got to say had left a small regret. But as the years passed, that regret faded. When we met again at a business event years later, he hadn't even recognized me. He said, "Who would have thought that after losing your baby fat, you'd be so stunning I couldn't take my eyes off you?" I wasn't sure whether I should be offended that he thought I wasn't good looking before, or if I should compliment him on his sweet talking skills. He only recognized me because Roman had called out to me from across the crowd. When I turned to look at Roman, I had this dazed expression on my face. That dazed look, he said, made me seem like a lost little bunny, and in that moment, he was hooked. In other words, love at first sight. I rolled my eyes and said, I looked dazed because I'm nearsighted, and had forgotten my contacts that day. He chuckled. Either way, I was smitten. And even when I found out later that you were no helpless bunny, but a wolf who could bite, I still willingly threw myself at you. He had originally planned to pursue me when he helped me take down my dad. But after that, my mom had passed away, and after that, my dad had his accident, so his plans to pursue me got pushed back again and again. But throughout all the chaos, he had never left my side, though always under the guise of a friend. I suddenly remembered the contract he had signed with me overseas. He had really gone all in. Neither of us could back out of that deal. I gave him a thumbs up and said, I'm not sure what to say to you. Well done, I guess. To reassure me before we got married, he had even suggested signing a postnuptial agreement, promising that if he ever cheated, he'd leave with nothing. I declined. If he ever did cheat, kicking him out with nothing wouldn't change anything. In fact, it might make him an even better actor, trying to avoid leaving with nothing. I was marrying him because I loved him, and believed he wouldn't cheat, and if he ever did, well, I'd be just fine on my own. But despite thinking I had it all figured out before we got married, after seeing him with Chloe today, and seeing her cry in front of him, I couldn't stop my mind from spiraling. If he really was cheating, or if this had all been a setup from the beginning between him and Chloe. As soon as that thought crossed my mind, I felt like I couldn't breathe. When Jaden came home, the moment he saw me, he knew something was off. He was too sharp for his own good. He knew immediately that I had seen him with Chloe earlier. He walked over and hugged me, saying, Victoria, I know it looks bad, but it's not what you think. He continued, I went to Chloe to cancel the order for our wedding dress. I found out a couple of days ago that she is your father's illegitimate daughter. I didn't think you'd want your once-in-a-lifetime wedding dress designed by her, or to have any further contact with her. After explaining, he looked at me and asked, Victoria, do you trust me? I looked into his eyes and replied, I do. I had trusted him even before he came home, but my parents' past had cast a shadow over me. Jaden wasn't like my father. His character, his love for me, it was all clear as day. I knew it in my heart, so I didn't ask why Chloe had been crying in front of him. But on the night of our wedding, I finally found out. Jaden's assistant had a bit too much to drink and spilled everything to Luna. And of course, Luna passed the story along to me. Jaden had found out that Chloe was my dad's illegitimate daughter, because someone had seen Chloe visiting her mom in prison. One of her rivals, eager to steal her business, had exposed her identity as an illegitimate child with a jailed mother. Jaden put two and two together, did some digging, and confirmed the truth. Chloe's rival had played dirty, but it didn't hurt her business too much, only affected Jaden and me. When Jaden went to cancel the order, Chloe had tried to plead her case. She said, I never intended to get close to you. I never wanted to take what wasn't mine. I just wanted to prove myself through my work. Jaden replied, Victoria admires your talent, but we're not saints. The least we can do is keep the innocent out of this. Then, emphasizing his point, he added, as long as they truly are innocent. Luna squealed on the other end of the phone. Jaden is so good at this subtle kind of threat. I glanced up at Jaden as he stepped out of the bathroom, and those 8-pack abs of his. I promptly hung up the phone. My best friend had better not ruin my night. This story has ended. Thank you for reading. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for the latest updates and new stories every day.